Ever feel like every family dinner carries the weight of the world on your shoulders? Imagine the smell of roast chicken filling a cramped dining room, the clink of glasses fading into whispers that aren't just small talk, they're plans about your life, made without you. You sit there, heart pounding, wondering how far you'd go to break a cycle that says you must always sacrifice. Is loyalty just about saying yes, no matter what? Or is there courage in saying, "This is mine, and I have to protect it"? What happens when standing up for yourself feels like being selfish, when all you want is to hold on to what you worked so damn hard for? I'm Leila Monroe, 32, a mortgage broker in Philadelphia. 6 years ago, I started saving every extra dime for my dream, owning my own townhouse. Last spring, that dream finally came true, but I kept it secret, didn't tell a soul in my family. I didn't know how important that silence would become. One Sunday, the quiet cracked. I heard my parents, Susan and David, planning how my brother Ben and his whole family would move into my new place, rent-free, without even asking me. That moment? It stopped me cold. Growing up, the rule was clear. Family always comes first. But somehow, the burden to give kept falling on me more than on Ben. I loved them, don't get me wrong, but it felt like my sacrifices weren't ever balanced. Ben's always been the charmer. Quick with a joke, good at making you laugh. But he's also been careless with money. By 25, he had credit card debt, a motorcycle he didn't really need, and expensive vacations he couldn't afford. At 30, he borrowed money from Mom and Dad for a business that crumbled in 6 months. Every time, the family stepped up to bail him out. And me? I was expected to chip in, whether that meant lending hard-earned savings or babysitting his 3 kids for free. Now, 8 months ago, Ben lost his marketing job after layoffs hit. His wife Sarah teaches part-time, but it's not nearly enough. Their landlord just raised their rent, and they're barely scraping by with Liam, Sophie, and little Ethan. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, boundaries, and finally standing up for myself. How do you protect your independence when your whole family thinks it's theirs to lean on? How do you decide where loyalty ends and where self-preservation begins? This is my story. Golden evening light spilled through the townhouse windows as Leila Monroe stood frozen by the front door. Her fingers tightened around the jangling keys. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and something heavier, uncertainty. Her phone buzzed, and the screen lit up with Ben Foster's name. She hesitated. Could this long-awaited investment actually last? Could she protect the independence she fought so hard for, without breaking under the weight of family expectations? The quiet creak of the wooden floor echoed in the stillness. Leila swallowed hard. "Hey, Leila," Ben's voice came through, friendly but fragile. "We need to talk about the house." Was this the moment everything changed? Was standing up for herself about to cost her more than money? 7 years ago, after finishing her MBA, Leila landed a job as a mortgage broker in Philadelphia. She threw herself into her work, frugal and focused. Lunches packed, skipped the coffee runs, put 30% of every paycheck into savings. The kind of discipline that never felt glamorous but promised freedom. Ben was always different. Charming, sure, but reckless with cash, and quick to lean on others when things fell apart. Credit cards maxed out, failed businesses, rent hikes. The family's goodwill stretched thin, always for him. Leila dreamed quietly about owning a place she could call her own without strings attached. When she finally found a brick townhouse, 2 units just outside downtown, it felt like a victory built on years of sacrifice. A safe corner carved out of chaos. She wouldn't say a word until closing day, not because she wanted to brag, but to keep her hard-earned peace. Now, standing inside, the bare rooms whispered promises of summers under the maple tree and quiet mornings filled with sunlight. Leila had done what so many wish for but few achieve. This was hers. Finally, but promises can crack under pressure. And family? Family has a way of showing up at your doorstep when you least expect it. Ben's struggles hadn't faded. His marketing job disappeared in a layoff 8 months ago. Sarah's part-time teaching barely covered rent, especially after the landlord hiked prices again. 3 kids, tight budgets, constant scrambles. For years, Leila had been the reliable one, babysitting when Ben couldn't pay, loaning money she couldn't afford to lose. But today was different. She felt it in her bones. Something must change. Could she draw the line without breaking the family bond? How do you say no when everyone expects yes? When loyalty blurs with sacrifice? That evening, the air outside stirred with a cold breeze. Leaves rustled softly against the window pane, as if the house itself was waiting for Leila's decision. She glanced again at her phone. Ben was calling back. Her heart pounded like a silent drum. Leila's voice was steady, but inside, everything trembled. Ben, we need to figure this out differently. This house isn't just yours to borrow. I worked for it. I'm done giving without limits. The line went quiet. The weight of those words hung between them. In that moment, Leila didn't just protect a townhouse. She claimed her worth, her boundaries, her hard-won independence. But would Ben see her choice as strength or betrayal? The night settled in, quiet but restless, the kind of pause before everything comes crashing or somehow finally falls into place. I researched rental rates in the area and created a listing for the second unit. My plan was to move into one side within the month and have a tenant in place for the other unit shortly thereafter. The rental income would cover about 60% of my monthly mortgage payment, making the investment even more financially sound. I contacted a few friends to help me move some of my furniture into the unit I planned to occupy. We spent a Saturday painting the living room and kitchen in soft, neutral tones. By the end of the day, with pizza boxes empty on the new countertops and paint smudges on our clothes, I felt a sense of ownership and accomplishment unlike anything I had experienced before. Little did I know that my carefully laid plans were about to collide with my family dynamics in a way I could never have anticipated. The following Sunday, I drove to my parents' suburban home for our regular family dinner, excited to finally share my news. I had decided this was the perfect time to announce my property purchase. I imagined my parents' proud faces and perhaps a touch of surprise that their daughter had accomplished this milestone on her own. I had even prepared a small speech and brought a bottle of champagne to celebrate. I arrived early to help my mother with dinner preparations, as was our custom. The aroma of pot roast filled the house, and my father was watching a baseball game in the living room. I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when I heard the front door open and close, followed by the sound of my brother Ben Foster, his wife Sarah, and their 3 children entering. My mother wiped her hands on her apron and went to greet them, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I continued preparing the salad, half listening to the greetings and chatter coming from the front hall. After a few minutes, I realized that my parents, Ben Foster and Sarah, had moved to my father's study adjacent to the kitchen. Their voices were lowered, but in the quiet house their words carried through the thin wall. I heard my father say, "It's the perfect solution. Jeannie has all this extra space now." My hands froze, knife hovering over a cucumber. Extra space. They could not possibly know about my townhouse. I had not told anyone in my family yet. My mother's voice chimed in. "She always helps family." "That's how we raised her," Ben Foster responded. "It would be such a relief, especially for the kids. They need stability right now." Then Sarah added, "I was thinking we could put the boys in one bedroom and Sophie in the other. The living room in their side is bigger than ours, right?" Their side. My heart began to race as I pieced together what was happening. Somehow, they knew about my townhouse and they had already made plans for Ben Foster family to move in without even consulting me. I remained frozen in place, straining to hear more of their conversation. "David Monroe, do you think Shell want us to help her move her things to make room?" my mother asked. "No need, Susan Monroe." Ben Foster replied. Instead of my father, She hardly has any furniture in that apartment of hers, always saving money instead of living a little. I heard Sarah's laugh followed by, "Well, help her decorate. I have so many ideas for making that place feel like a real home." My cheeks burned with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Not only had they discovered my purchase, but they had already decided that Ben Foster family would be moving into the second unit without even asking me. And from the sounds of it, they expected them to live there rentree. I forced myself to continue chopping vegetables as my mind raced. How did they find out? Perhaps they had seen my name in property records, or maybe one of my parents' friends had spotted me at the property and mentioned it. Regardless of how they knew, their presumption was staggering. When we finally sat down for dinner, I waited for them to bring it up, curious to see how they would present this plan to me. After the food was served and we had exchanged the usual pleasantries, my father cleared his throat. "Jeannie." He began a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "We have some wonderful news. We have found the perfect solution to Ben Foster's housing problem." I took a sip of water, avoiding eye contact with anyone at the table. My mother continued, "We know about your townhouse, sweetheart. Mrs. Johnson from church saw you there last week and mentioned it to me. We are so proud of you for taking such a big step." Before I could respond, Ben Foster jumped in. "And it's such perfect timing, sis. With our rent situation and the kids' school being so close to your new place, it just makes sense for us to take the other unit." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "We promised to be the perfect neighbors. The kids are so excited about living close to their Aunt Jeannie." I felt all eyes on me waiting for my excited agreement. The expectation in the room was palpable. Of course, I would say yes. When had I ever said no to my family? Ben Foster children were watching me with hopeful expressions. Liam, the oldest, said, "Mom says we can walk to school from the new house and you can help me with my math homework whenever I need it." I forced a smile, unable to disappoint the children in that moment. The adults at the table took my smile as agreement, and the conversation quickly turned to moving logistics. My mother started planning. "We can help you move your things next weekend, and then Ben Foster and Sarah can start bringing their things over the following week." Ben Foster added, "The timing is perfect since our lease is up at the end of the month and without rent to pay, we can finally start getting ahead financially." The assumption that they would live there rentree was now stated explicitly. Not a single person at the table seemed to think this was an extraordinary request. Leila Monroe's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. The hum of the engine thrummed under her hands, steady, demanding. Outside, the Philadelphia skyline blurred past neon signs flickering through rain-scented air. Inside the car, silence wrapped around her like a shroud, broken only by the sharp beat of her heart. Then her phone buzzed. The screen lit up. "Ben, we need to talk." She stared at the message, breath caught tight, knowing whatever came next could change everything. How much could she lose before she finally said no? How often had she put everyone else's needs before her own? The weight of generations of expectations pressed in, sacrificing dreams to keep family afloat. But now, at this intersection of loyalty and independence, was her moment to draw a line. Dinner had been the same old story, only this time her family's plans came dressed as a solution. Ben Foster, charming as ever, painting his dependency as a win-win. "We'll take the other unit," he said, eyes hopeful, kids excited to be close. The room waited for her yes. Again. No one asked how this would hit her mortgage. No one thought about Leila's late nights scraping together that down payment. No one asked if she even wanted to share her hard-earned space. She pushed food around her plate, nodded politely, keeping peace, but inside, a spark flickered. That night, memories flooded back. Summers canceled to fix Ben's car, weekends babysitting so he and Sarah could have date nights. Always the reliable one, the lone single aunt expected to carry the weight. Pulling into her apartment lot, rain tapping softly on the roof, Leila made a choice. Not this time. Not anymore. Morning light found her at the kitchen table, coffee steaming like a lifeline. A notebook opened. Lines filled fast. A ledger of years spent giving without receiving. 2 jobs through undergrad while Ben Foster's tuition was covered. Money lent with promises that never came. Gifts bought because you don't have kids. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Leila's hands trembled, but her eyes held something fierce. Clarity born of pain, hardened by sacrifice. Was it time to finally say no? To stand firm and fight for her independence? To protect not just a townhouse, but everything she'd fought to build? The city outside buzzed on, unaware. Inside her small kitchen, a quiet revolution stirred. Would you say yes again? Or would you finally take back what's yours? The memory hit Leila as she stood in the empty townhouse living room. Sunlight spilled through cracked blinds, stretching warped rectangles across worn floorboards. The scent of fresh paint mingled with dust. It was the smell of hope, and something else, something heavier, like a weight settled deep in her chest. She thought back to childhood mornings. Her mom bustling around, the smell of coffee not quite masking old tension. Ben sprawled across the kitchen table, half distracted, half expecting her to bail him out yet again. The crunch of cereal. His eyes wide with that familiar hope that Leila would fix whatever mess he'd gotten into. And, more often than not, she did. She squeezed the doorframe gently, breath catching as frustration surged. Was this ever going to be her space? The one place she could finally say no? Everyone at dinner had been so calm. Too calm. Ben smiled, charming as always, pitching his idea. We'll take the other unit, kids close by. It's a win-win. His voice carried that familiar ease, the one that made her doubt herself. But no one asked how this would strain her mortgage. No one thought about the late nights she'd spent scraping together the down payment. No one asked if she even wanted to share the space she'd fought for. She pushed food around her plate, saying nothing. Inside, a spark hovered, ready to ignite. Later, rain tapped softly against her apartment window. The smell of wet pavement and fallen leaves filled the air outside. Alone, Leila pulled out her notebook. Coffee steamed, a lifeline in her hands. She wrote down every sacrifice. Summers lost fixing Ben's old car, weekends babysitting while he and Sarah had date nights, money lent without promises kept. Her hands trembled as the truth settled in. Why had she always been the one to give? Why was her independence never part of the equation? The city hummed outside, unaware of the quiet storm building inside her. Why say yes again? Why let her hard-earned dreams crumble under someone else's needs? She dialed her closest friend, Taylor. They can't just move in like they own the place, Taylor said, voice sharp with disbelief. You saved for years. This is your future. Nobody gets to borrow it for free. But they're family, Leila found herself saying, the old habit creeping in. Family or not, Taylor shot back, that doesn't mean they get to use you. Would Ben do the same for you? You know he wouldn't. Leila felt a flicker of something steadier. Resolve. Taylor warned her. If you let this slide, there's no getting it back. Your townhouse becomes a burden, not an asset. And she was right. That afternoon, Leila made a choice. Not confrontation, yet. But she'd take back control. She contacted 3 property management companies. By Tuesday evening, a contract with Cornerstone Property Management was signed. Reliable, respected, and firm. Leila looked around the empty townhouse again. This time, the sunlight didn't feel like a weight. It felt like a new chance. A space finally hers. A future she'd fight for. Leila Monroe stood in the kitchen of her new townhouse, scrubbing down the counters when she heard footsteps. Not hers. Another set. Soft, but deliberate. Voices echoed faintly from the hallway. David's calm pitch faltered mid-sentence, replaced by a laugh Leila knew deep down. Ben Foster. There he was, standing in the sunlit living room, keys dangling from his fingers. The scent of fresh paint mixed with the sharp sting of panic in her chest. This day wasn't just about Lisa's anymore. Someone else's plan was unfolding, right under her nose. How could she protect what she fought so hard to build? Could she hold on to her independence when family ties felt like chains? The air was thick with tension. The quiet now screamed louder than any argument. She remembered the promises she'd made to herself, the nights she counted every penny, the summers spent patching up Ben's old car, the weekends lost to babysitting, and the weight of family expectations always pulling her back. But today, Leila wasn't just a hard worker. She was taking control. David had assured her the townhouse's location would attract ideal renters fast. Renting both units meant she could finally make a clean break from family drama. She planned to move closer to work, cut down the endless commute, and carve out space just for herself. By Friday, Cornerstone had prepped several potential tenants. Leila cleared her schedule, leaving work to meet David, talk rates, leases, and tenant criteria. The market was hot, David said. A 12-month lease just above her original estimate would cover nearly 75% of her mortgage. The week flew by in a blur, dodging family calls about plans, meeting tenants discreetly, reviewing applications, and packing up the townhouse. Sunday dinner. She claimed urgent work, anything to buy time. In the end, Leila signed leases with two perfect tenants, Michael and Lisa, young healthcare pros ready to settle in one unit, and surprisingly, Ben and Sarah's soon-to-be space was rented to Dr. Eleanor Wilson, a retired professor downsizing after loss. No family handouts, no expectations, just boundaries. With leases starting next month, Leila booked professional cleaners and inspections. The townhouse was becoming hers in a way it never had before. Her sanctuary, her victory, not a burden she carried for others. Leila paused. The keys in her hand felt heavier now, but they were hers. She asked herself silently, "Who am I doing this for?" The answer was clear. Herself. This time, she wouldn't let anyone else's needs overwrite her hard-earned freedom. Meanwhile, I found a small but modern one-bedroom apartment in a building just 3 blocks from my office. The rent was higher than I had hoped, but the convenience and proximity to work made it worthwhile. Plus, with the rental income from both townhouse units, my overall housing expenses would still be lower than before. I signed a 6-month lease on the apartment and arranged for my furniture to be moved the following weekend. I told only Taylor and 2 other close friends about my new address, swearing them to secrecy. I would tell my family eventually, of course, but not until after both townhouse units were occupied, and it was too late for them to change my plans. The guilt was considerable, especially when Ben Foster called to ask if I needed help packing up my apartment. I gave vague responses about not being ready yet and having everything under control. When my mother texted about coming over to measure for curtains in what would be Ben Foster's side, I replied that I was still dealing with paperwork and would let them know when the time was right. As move-in day approached for my new tenants, the calls and texts from my family became more frequent and insistent. Sarah sent links to furniture she thought would look nice in my unit. My father called to discuss helping with moving costs for Ben Foster. My mother left voicemails about organizing a housewarming party for all of us. Each message increased my anxiety but also strengthened my resolve. The pattern was so clear now. My family making plans for my life, my resources, my future without consulting me. Always assuming I would go along with whatever they decided was best, even when it primarily benefited Ben Foster at my expense. The weekend before the tenants were scheduled to move in, I successfully relocated to my new apartment. I changed my mailing address, updated my information with the bank and utility companies, and settled into my new smaller space. Leila Monroe stood in her cramped new apartment, the faint scent of fresh paint mingling with the soft rustle of leaves outside. It was small, but hers. The balcony faced a quiet courtyard where children's laughter drifted through the evening air. The sleek kitchen appliances gleamed under the soft light, the kind of luxury she never expected to afford on her own. Unpacking, she felt sharp contrasts swirl inside her. Pride in this hard-won independence, tangled with pain and a gnawing guilt, because she knew the storm was coming. Her family had never taken no for an answer, especially when no meant saying no to her brother Ben, the charming but reckless man who leaned on everyone else, especially her, to keep his family afloat. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Ben. "Hey sis, can we drop off some kids' stuff this weekend? Sarah's packed their rooms." Leila stared at the screen, breath catching. She typed slowly. "Still sorting paperwork. I'll let you know." The silence that followed felt heavy, like the calm before a tidal wave. Then a knock rattled the door, sharp enough to make her heart skip. She opened it, expecting Ben. But it was Sarah, Ben's wife, standing there quietly, clutching a thick envelope, her eyes steady. "I signed the lease," Sarah said, voice low but firm. "I rented the other unit. Already did it." Leila's blood ran cold. The cozy haven she had built blurred, shifting suddenly into a space laced with betrayal and raw panic. The scent of Sarah's perfume wrapped around her like a warning. Somewhere beyond the window, children's laughter echoed, innocent and unaware. Sarah stepped inside, the envelope too heavy in her hands. "We thought you'd understand," Sarah whispered. "For the family." For a moment, everything froze. Would Leila forgive the breach? Could she? The last week had been a battlefield. Every call, every text from Ben Foster and their parents chipped away at her confidence. Mom promising curtains she'd never asked for. Dad pushing for moving dates and promises made without her. Leila had rehearsed her lines, calm, measured, assertive. But beneath her careful words was a storm of frustration. This wasn't just about rent or logistics. It was about control. About standing firm when everyone expected her to give in. "Ben's landlord wants him out by Friday," Dad's text read. "When can they move in?" Leila swallowed hard, then dialed her father, keeping her voice steady. "Dad, I'm still handling repairs and paperwork. No one can move in yet." Her resolve wasn't just stubbornness. It was survival. She had fought to build this life, to secure her financial independence, to prove she wasn't just the family's safety net anymore. But family wasn't giving ground. Not without a fight. Now, with that envelope in her hands, and Ben's side of the townhouse leased without her consent, Leila had a choice. Bend again, like always, or finally draw the line. The night air outside was cool, carrying distant sounds of life going on. Unaware of the quiet war unfolding here? Inside, Leila took a steadying breath. The fight for her future wasn't over, not by a long shot. Ben says he'll have a better timeline next week. His frustration was clear, like a storm gathering fast. "Jeannie, they need to make decisions now. The landlord's already showing the place to new tenants." Dad's voice pressed through the phone. "We can't just leave them scrambling." I kept my tone steady. "I get it, Dad, but I need to make sure everything's handled right first." There was no room for rushing, especially when years of hard work were on the line. "You'll get an update soon." Thursday hit with an unexpected surprise. I was knee-deep in a client meeting when the receptionist called me out. Ben was in the lobby. My brother, pacing nervously, running his hand through his hair like he'd lost a bet. The moment we locked eyes, the tension spilled out. "Jeannie, we have to talk about move-in dates," Ben urged, voice low but tense. "Sarah's freaking out. We're out by the end of the month and you keep stalling about moving into the townhouse." I glanced around, the receptionist pretending not to eavesdrop, the distant hum of phones, the sterile office scent. This was not the place. "Ben, I'm with a client," I whispered sharply. "We can't talk here." His frustration cracked through, voice rising. "You don't answer calls, don't give clear answers. What am I supposed to do?" I inhaled, steadying myself. "I've got this under control. There are still things to fix in the place." "More info by the weekend," I promised. He paused, the doubt still there. But then, Sarah wondered if you have paint color preferences for the kids. Light blue for the boys, lavender for Sophie. The nerve. I held back a flicker of irritation. This was my property, not theirs to decorate. "Let's talk about everything later," I said, already turning back toward the meeting room. Ben Foster's voice trembled with desperation, echoing through the hum of printers and phones. I felt every eye flicker our way. Tension coiled tighter. Was this the moment my resolve would crack? That unspoken choice hovered, one step away from unraveling years of boundaries. What would I risk next to protect my independence? And who would pay the price? The faint rustle of leaves outside whispered against the cool Philadelphia air. Somewhere, distant laughter mingled with the rain's scent, a stark contrast to the storm inside these walls. Would standing firm finally break the cycle? Or was I just buying time in a battle that wouldn't end anytime soon? I took a breath. The fight wasn't over, not even close. That evening, I received an email from Sarah with the subject line, "Kind of tight on cash right now, but should be able to pay you back next month." Each message reinforced the rightness of my decision. The entitlement was so ingrained that Ben Foster could not even see it. He simply expected me to accommodate his needs, finance his move, and rearrange my life to solve his problems, all without question or complaint. Saturday morning, the day my tenants were scheduled to move in. I woke early with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I had arranged to meet David at the townhouse at 9 Huanguash to oversee the move-in process and provide keys to both sets of tenants. Dr. Wilson would arrive at 9:30, and Michael and Lisa were scheduled for 11. I dressed carefully in professional attire, wanting to present myself as a competent property owner. As I was about to leave my new apartment, my phone rang. It was my father. "Jeannie," he said, "without preamble, your mother and I are heading to the townhouse now. We thought we'd surprise you and bring breakfast. Ben Foster and Sarah are meeting us there with some boxes." My heart raced. They were going to arrive before me, before the tenants, before I had a chance to explain. The confrontation I had been dreading was about to happen in the worst possible way. "Actually, Dad, I'm not at the townhouse." I managed to say, "I'm on my way there now to meet someone." "Perfect. Well, see you there," he replied cheerfully, hanging up before I could protest further. I immediately called David to warn him about the situation. He assured me he would handle it professionally and wait for my arrival before proceeding with the tenant move-ins. The drive to the townhouse was the longest 20 minutes of my life. With each mile, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would explain my decision, and how I would stand firm in the face of what would surely be anger and disappointment from my family. As I turned onto the street, I could see my parents' car already parked in front of the townhouse. Ben Foster's minivan was pulling up behind it. The moving truck rounded the corner and into view, its engine rumbling softly against the quiet street. My heart hammered as Dr. Wilson's car pulled up behind it. She was early. I parked carefully behind Ben's minivan, chest tight with a mix of dread and resolve. Through the windshield, I saw my family clustered on the sidewalk, faces frozen in confusion and expectation. David, wearing his property manager polo, was gesturing at the townhouse as my dad's voice cut through, low and firm. "This is our daughter's place. She bought it for our family," he said, a flicker of disbelief in his tone. David nodded at me as I stepped out. "Mrs. Monroe," he greeted, voice steady, almost formal. "Your family thought today was their move-in." My palms pressed against the car door. The scent of rain hung faintly in the air, mixing with the distant rustle of leaves. The memory flooded me. My first paycheck in trembling fingers, crisp bills still warm from the printer, my mother's grateful smile, her hand soft on my cheek. That night, the living room glowed amber. The fridge's hum a quiet backdrop as my father counted every dollar with a blend of pride and hope, yet also expectation. The cold pizza on the table always tasted like love, but also burden. Now, all of it pressed down hard. "Mom, Dad, Ben, Sarah," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "I need to explain something." My mother clutched a bakery bag, brows furrowed. "Leila, what's going on? Who's this man? And why is that moving truck here?" From across the street, Dr. Wilson stepped out, her eyes scanning us, curious yet patient. Ben's jaw tightened. "Leila, we were supposed to move in today. We gave notice. What's all this?" Before I could answer, David moved forward smoothly, blocking tension like a shield. "Let's clear the way for Ms. Wilson's move-in. She's got an appointment scheduled and the movers are waiting." Sarah's voice cracked with disbelief. "Wait, her new home? What are you even saying, Leila?" Every pair of eyes locked on me. I inhaled deeply, feeling rain-damp air fill my lungs. "I rented both units," I said plainly. "They're for tenants." The shock swept through the group like a storm. Faces fell. Ben looked away, anger mixing with shame. My parents stood silent, questions tangled in their eyes. Years of sacrifice, the quiet weight of expectations, and the hope I once held. Everything changed in that moment. But finally, I was standing for myself. No more debt to family demands, no more sacrificing my independence. This was my life to live. Dr. Wilson is moving into Unit A today, and another couple is moving into Unit B later this morning. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother gasped, my father's face darkened with anger, and Ben Foster stared at me in disbelief. David, sensing the tension, turned to Dr. Wilson. "Doctor, if you'll allow me a few minutes to resolve this family matter, it'll be right with you to complete your move-in process." She nodded understandingly and returned to her car to wait. "You did what my father finally asked," his voice dangerously quiet. "I rented both units," I repeated. "I signed year-long leases with qualified tenants through Cornerstone Property Management." Ben Foster exploded. "Are you kidding me? We have nowhere to live, Jeannie. We gave notice. Where are we supposed to go in 2 weeks?" Sarah started to cry, turning away from the group and pulling out her phone, presumably to text someone about this development. My mother stepped forward and placed her hand on my arm. "Sweetheart, there must be some misunderstanding. We discussed this. Ben Foster and his family need that second unit. You know their situation." I gently removed her hand. "No, Mom. You discussed it. You all made plans for my property without asking me. You assumed I would just go along with it like I always do," my father interjected. "We thought you would want to help your brother. Family helps family, Jeannie. That's how we raised you." His words meant to induce guilt instead fueled my determination. Yes, family helps family, but it should go both ways. When has Ben Foster ever made sacrifices for me? When have any of you considered what I might need or want before making decisions that affect my life? Ben Foster scoffed. "Oh, here we go with the poor Jeannie routine. You have a good job, no kids, no real responsibilities. Some of us have actual problems." His dismissal of my life and choices was the final straw. Leila Monroe stood in her driveway, shoulders stiff and heart racing. The summer air hung heavy, almost sticky, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut grass and the distant hum of lawnmowers. Her father's voice cut through the tension, calm but heavy with disappointment. "Your brother has children to think about." Ben Foster stared at his worn sneakers, the weight of their family's expectations pressing down like the humid afternoon. The neighbor's car idled quietly nearby, silent witnesses to a family unraveling. Behind the tinted windows, Michael and Lisa exchanged uneasy glances, caught between staying or driving away. Leila's mind flashed back to the years she sacrificed, skipping vacations, working overtime, scrimping every penny to buy a townhouse on her own terms. Now, it all felt threatened. Could she finally draw a line? Could she put herself first? This once. The silence stretched, raw and thick. She squared her shoulders. "I'm not being selfish," she said, voice firm but tired. "This isn't just about me. It's about my future. My mortgage isn't charity." Ben's face flushed with frustration. You know our situation. We're just trying to find stability. Leila's eyes burned. Stability doesn't mean living rent-free on someone else's struggle. I've covered losses you never noticed. Her mother's quiet sob broke the moment, and her father wrapped an arm around Susan, their faces etched with disbelief. For years, Leila thought, I've been everything to everyone. But what about me? She glanced back at the townhouse, that symbol of months fighting payday doubts and the housing squeeze. Turning away now meant risking her hard-won independence. The question lingered, slicing through the humid dusk. What if? This time. Leila chooses herself. What if she refuses to be the safety net? Would that break the family, or finally set her free? I never got back to rearrange my schedule to accommodate Ben Foster's needs. What exactly have you done for me, Ben Foster? I asked quietly. Name one time you've put my needs before your own. One time you've sacrificed anything for me. He faltered, unable to come up with an example. My father stepped in. That's enough, Jeannie. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't how we raised you to behave. Family comes first. Yes, family comes first. I agreed, but in family too. And for years, I've been expected to put everyone else's needs ahead of my own. Not anymore. So, what are we supposed to do now? Ben Foster demanded. Where are we supposed to live? The same place you would live if I hadn't bought this townhouse, I replied. Find an apartment you can afford. Budget your money. Do what every other family has to do. Sarah scoffed. Easy for you to say from your position of privilege. Her comment ignited a fresh wave of anger. Privilege. I worked 60-hour weeks for years to save for this property. I packed lunches instead of eating out. I lived in a tiny apartment and drove an old car. I earned this through hard work and careful planning, not privilege. My mother, always the peacemaker, tried another approach. Jeannie, sweetheart, maybe we can compromise. Perhaps Ben Foster could pay some rent, even if it's below market rate. I shook my head. It's too late for that, Mom. I've signed binding leases with both tenants. They have legal rights to occupy those units for the next 12 months. You could break the leases, my father suggested. Pay whatever penalty there is. The fact that he would suggest I take a financial hit to fix Ben Foster's problem perfectly illustrated the dynamic I was fighting against. No, I said firmly, I will not break legal contracts and risk my professional reputation because Ben Foster failed to plan properly. These tenants have rights, and I intend to honor my agreements with them. Ben Foster threw up his hands in disgust. Unbelievable. So much for family loyalty. My mother was openly crying now. I don't understand why you didn't just tell us your plans, Jeannie. Why keep it a secret if you weren't doing anything wrong? Her question hit me hard. It was a fair point. Why hadn't I simply told them up front? Because you never would have listened, I replied honestly. You would have pressured me to change my mind, made me feel guilty, and probably would have worn me down eventually. You didn't even ask me before making plans for my property. You just assumed I would go along with what you wanted like I always do. David approached cautiously. Mrs. Harper, Dr. Wilson, is ready to begin her move-in process, and Michael and Lisa are waiting as well. I nodded to him, grateful for the interruption. I need to attend to my tenants now. I told my family. We can continue this discussion later if you want, but my decision is final. My father's face was a mask of disappointment as he took my mother's arm. Let's go, Susan Monroe. Clearly, Jeannie has made her choice. Ben Foster remained defiant. This isn't over, Jeannie. You can't just leave us homeless. You're not homeless, Ben Foster, I said, exhaustion creeping into my voice. You have 2 weeks to find a new place. Plenty of families manage it every day. Sarah grabbed his arm. Come on, Ben Foster. She obviously doesn't care about us or the children. Let's go. As they turned to leave, my mother looked back at me with tears in her eyes. I don't recognize you anymore, Jeannie. This isn't the daughter I raised. Her words stung, but I stood my ground as they all got into their vehicles and drove away. Only when they were out of sight did I allow my shoulders to slump and the tears to well in my eyes. David approached and handed me a tissue. "That was tough," he said kindly, "but for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." I wiped my eyes and straightened my posture. "Thank you. Now let's get Dr. Wilson moved into her new home." Rain pattered softly against the window as Leila Monroe's keys jingled in her hand. The townhouse was finally hers, after 6 grueling years of saving every dollar, juggling late shifts, and dodging endless family pressure. But as she turned to unlock the door, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated and answered. "Hi, this is Ben Foster's landlord." The voice cracked through the line. "Ben hasn't paid rent in weeks, and he disappeared. Left town. You're listed as the emergency contact." A chill ran through Leila. The pile of unopened mail by the door rustled faintly in the afternoon breeze, unnoticed until now. Why hadn't Ben told her? Why had he kept the truth hidden, leaving her to face the fallout alone? His charm, the way he always smiled, acted like everything was fine. Was it just a mask? A betrayal hiding under years of family loyalty? She stared out at the fading light, questioning everything. The silence from her family was crushing. No texts, no calls, just a hollow quiet where love once lived. Leila's phone sat heavy in her hand, the weight of broken bonds threatening to pull her under. Yet she breathed in deep, the scent of rain and fresh pavement grounding her. "I'm not selfish," she whispered to the empty room. "I had to protect what I earned." But part of her still ached with doubt. How do you stand firm when those you love turn away? When sacrifices demanded aren't returned with respect? Days later, Taylor showed up with food and wine, breaking the isolation like a burst of summer sun after the storm. "You did right," she said firmly. 6 years of hard work isn't charity for anyone, family or not. Leila nodded, sipping the wine slowly, the warmth settling her nerves. The townhouse wasn't just a house, it was her independence, her boundaries, her future. No one else's expectations could steal that from her, not even Ben's shadow, nor the weight of old family ties. And as the rain finally faded and the city breathed a quiet sigh, Leila Monroe stood taller, ready to write her own story, unbroken and unapologetic. In the quiet of my kitchen, the fridge hummed, a low, steady sound that felt almost loud against the stillness. My fingers traced the edges of David's report, the list of minor repairs reading like a quiet victory. Leaky faucet in Unit A, sticky door in Unit B. I should have felt relief. Instead, my chest tightened. Ben hadn't texted in days. No calls, no sign. Was this the peace I'd longed for, or the calm before a storm ready to crash down? I set the phone down, slowly. Had I finally drawn a line? Or was I about to lose my brother for good? The answer hovered, just out of reach. Family is supposed to be a two-way street, right? Support, not just endless giving until you're empty. When was the last time Ben actually made a sacrifice for me? I couldn't name one. Taylor was right. This pattern had to break. I wasn't his safety net anymore. If anything, I was forcing him to stand on his own. At first, my mind busied itself with the practical stuff. The tenants moving in, the email updates from the property manager, the rental payments landing in my bank account. Each center and check screamed one thing. I did this. The townhouse was really mine. All those years, all those late nights saving every penny. It was for this. But then, the silence from my family sank deeper. No texts from Ben, no calls from Mom. Was he okay? Had they found a place before their lease ended? I needed to know. So, finally, I sent a message. Just checking in. Hours passed before she replied. "We're fine. Ben and Sarah found an apartment. Smaller than they wanted, but affordable." Short, formal. Like the distance between us had grown too wide for words. I closed my eyes and breathed in the scent of rain mixing with fresh pavement outside. This quiet felt heavier than any argument. Had I done the right thing? Was standing up for myself worth this growing gulf? I didn't have the answer, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. The soft tear of the envelope echoed in Leila's ears. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out the letter inside, the scent of old paper mixed with the faint rain dripping against the window. She read her mother's words slowly, each sentence heavy with regret and honesty. "My dearest Leila," it began, "it's taken me a long time to see things from your side." For the first time, her mother admitted the family had leaned too hard on Leila's kindness, expecting sacrifices she shouldn't have to make. The letter confessed the truth. Ben had been allowed to coast on their support, never truly stepping up. "Your father and I were wrong to assume you'd always be there," the letter said. Leila's breath caught, but then, as if time slowed, a worn photograph slipped from between the pages, face down. Heart pounding, she froze. What secret was buried in her family's past? What had they never told her? The letter went on, explaining that Ben and Sarah had finally moved into a small, cramped two-bedroom across town. It wasn't perfect, but at least it was theirs. Ben had landed part-time work at a warehouse, far from the dream career they all hoped for. Sarah was juggling more teaching hours to keep them afloat. The letter closed with an olive branch, an invitation to Sunday dinner. "Your father and I will respect your boundaries," her mother promised cautiously. "Ben Foster may need time." But Leila wasn't sure if rebuilding was possible, or if this was just the start of a new battle. Could she protect what she'd earned while holding on to a family that seemed to keep pulling her back? The scent of fresh-cut grass drifted through the open car window as Leila drove toward her childhood home. Her knuckles clenched tight around the steering wheel, heart pounding like a drum. She could almost hear the creak of the old screen door, the steady stomp of her father's boots on the worn linoleum floor. Afternoon memories flashed, long hours pulling weeds under the hot sun, sweat dripping down her brow, her mother's voice swirling around talk of bills and dreams that never quite came true. That house felt like a cage, familiar and suffocating, a place where she was always the one expected to sacrifice, to carry everyone else's weight while her own hopes quietly faded. She had fought hard for her independence, her financial freedom, and yet every step away felt like a betrayal. Could she have both loyalty to family and freedom for herself, or was she doomed to choose one over the other? "Love always, Mom." Leila held the letter close. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. An acknowledgement, a crack in the walls that had kept her bottled in for so long. Her mother's words confessed the truth she'd dreaded. They had leaned too hard on her kindness. Ben, charming but reckless, had coasted on family support for too long. They were finally trying to let go. That Sunday, nervous but hopeful, Leila walked up the porch steps. The door swung open and her mother's arms enfolded her before words could catch up. "I've missed you," came the quiet whisper. "I've missed you too," Leila replied, fighting tears. Dinner was quieter than the usual chaos. Ben and Sarah weren't there, not yet. Her father, awkward and distant at first, began to thaw as the evening wore on. By the time dessert arrived, at least half of them spoke like family again. Before she left, her father pulled her aside in the dim hallway. "We were wrong," he said gruffly, "planning for your townhouse without talking to you. You earned it. It's yours." Those words landed heavy. Coming from him, they meant something bigger than just an apology. "Thank you, Dad," she said, hugging him tight. "That means everything." But family is never simple. Ben and Sarah stayed distant, skipping every gathering that included her. When she finally saw them again, at her nephew's birthday party 2 months later, the air was thick with tension. Ben's polite smile didn't reach his eyes. Sarah barely glanced her way. Yet the kids, Sophie's hug, Liam's excited science project, little Ethan's cuddles, those moments felt real. They pulled some warmth back into a chilly room. Change was slow. Small steps forward. Her parents started asking for her opinion, not giving orders. Boundaries were respected. Kind of. Leila held on to the hard-won truth. She could protect her independence and still hold space for family. It wasn't easy. It wasn't neat. But it was hers. And maybe that was enough. They stopped automatically volunteering my time and resources for family needs. It was a subtle but profound change that validated my decision to stand up for myself. Ben Foster and Sarah remained distant, but there were small signs of progress. Ben Foster sent me a text when he secured a full-time position at a local company, a small olive branch that I gratefully acknowledged with congratulations. Sarah included me in a group text about school fundraisers, a minor inclusion that nonetheless indicated a thawing of relations. Most surprisingly, my brother seemed to be developing a sense of financial responsibility that had previously been absent. According to my mother, he and Sarah had created a budget and were sticking to it. They had even started a small savings account, a first in their married life. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself both anticipating and dreading the holiday. It would be the first major family gathering since the townhouse incident, as I had come to think of it. When my mother called to confirm I would be attending, she mentioned casually that Ben Foster and Sarah would be there with the kids. "They're doing better now," she added. "Ben Foster especially. I think this whole experience has been a wake-up call for him." When the day arrived, I brought a bottle of wine and my signature pumpkin pie armor of sorts for the potentially uncomfortable reunion. To my surprise, Ben Foster greeted me at the door, offering a tentative smile. "Hey, Jeannie," he said. "Good to see you." "Good to see you, too," I replied, meaning it despite my nervousness. The day was not without its awkward moments, but overall it was more pleasant than I had dared hope. During a quiet moment in the kitchen, Ben Foster approached me as I was refilling my water glass. "I want to apologize," he said, clearly uncomfortable but determined. "What we tried to do with your townhouse wasn't right. We shouldn't have expected you to house us for free." His apology, though belated, was sincere. The sky was darkening as Leila Monroe drove through the quiet streets. Rain tapped lightly against her windshield, the faint scent of wet leaves drifting in through the cracked window. She could still hear it, the buzz of the flickering fluorescent light, the sharp sting of stale coffee fumes in that cramped Philadelphia townhouse. The silence after her words hung heavy, raw, unfiltered, overdue. Her chest ached, both from fear and relief. Ben Foster's tired, red-rimmed eyes shifting away, the subtle sound of rain hitting a fogged window. It was the moment everything changed. Would she lose her family, or finally find herself? 6 months after that night, things weren't perfect, but they were real. The fight at the townhouse had cracked open old wounds but also built a foundation. Ben Foster, her brother, was finally learning what responsibility meant. "The apartment we found, it's teaching us to live within our means," he said, the pride subtle but there. She smiled, feeling warmth she hadn't expected. "I even started a savings account," he added, voice steadier than before. "Not much in it yet, but a start." Leila's relentless stand for her independence wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming respect, boundaries, her right to protect what she worked so hard for. She'd stopped silently giving away her time, her energy, her finances. No more being the family safety net that never felt safe for her. And finally, her parents' love felt more balanced, more genuine. Her townhome, once a battleground, became a source of strength. Reliable tenants brought steady rent, covering most of the mortgage. Equity was growing. Even Dr. Wilson, one tenant, sent a holiday card. A quiet thank you for providing a fresh start. Leila unlocked her apartment door that evening and felt a deep peace settle in her chest. The journey had been painful, yes, but it led to growth, sometimes messy, sometimes slow, but real. Now her home reflected her, not leftovers or borrowed pieces, intentional and hers. She'd claimed her space, her voice, her future, because standing up isn't just about fighting, it's about knowing what you deserve. And sometimes you have to risk everything to finally be yourself. Would Ben Foster's new chapter last? Could their family boundaries hold? Only time would tell. But for tonight, Leila Monroe was home. Leila Monroe's mornings had changed. That extra hour she gained from a shorter commute became her sanctuary. She started her days with yoga, each stretch pushing out years of stress. Afterwards, she'd curl up with books, those little pieces of peace she'd long denied herself while hustling and saving every penny. Her townhouse investment was finally paying off. The property managers sent crisp monthly reports. Rental deposits hit her account right on time. Both tenants renewed their leases, a quiet nod to her smart choices. Dr. Wilson had brightened her corner of the garden with fresh flowers, their colors vivid against the gray city backdrop. Michael and Lisa gave their living room a facelift too. Fresh paint, gentle upgrades that only boosted the townhouse's value. Family dinners returned, but with a new rhythm. Sundays felt less like obligation and more like connection. For the first time, her parents treated her as a partner in conversation, not just the reliable daughter who always said yes. Her dad even asked for her thoughts on his retirement plan, a sure sign he respected her financial knowledge. But the biggest shift was with Ben Foster, her brother. Childhood roles didn't just shift, they flipped. Ben Foster, once the charming yet reckless one, was pulling his weight. After their confrontation at the townhouse, he landed a steady job and worked hard to keep it. He and Sarah cut back, living within their means for once. Now, Ben Foster was even paying back the money he'd borrowed from her. Small amounts, but consistent. No reminders needed. One warm Saturday in June, exactly a year after the townhouse showdown, Ben Foster asked her to meet for coffee. Leila stood by her living room window, twilight spilling over the townhouse rooftops. The faint scent of rain hung in the air. The garden behind Dr. Wilson's unit, barely visible now, swayed gently in the evening breeze. Her phone buzzed, cutting through the calm. It was Ben Foster. On her rental app, the subject line blinked, "Unexpected withdrawal." Her heart tightened. Her hard-earned peace was on the line. The message read, "About the deposit. Can we talk?" Could Leila hold her ground this time? Or was everything she fought for about to unravel? We typically only saw each other at family gatherings. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I agreed. The coffee shop was busy with weekend customers, but Ben Foster had secured a quiet table in the corner. He looked different somehow, more settled in himself. He had traded his usual graphic t-shirts for a simple button-down, and his perpetually disheveled hair was neatly trimmed. "Thanks for meeting me," he said as I sat down with my latte. "I wanted to talk to you without the whole family around." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. He took a deep breath. "This past year has been enlightening. When you refused to let us move into your townhouse, I was furious. I thought you were being selfish and cruel, especially knowing our situation with the kids." He paused, collecting his thoughts. But looking back, it was the wake-up call I needed. Sarah and I had been living beyond our means for years, always expecting someone, usually you or mom and dad, to bail us out when things got tough. His self-awareness caught me by surprise. It must have shown on my face because he smiled ruefully. "I know, shocking that I can admit it, right?" he said. "But it's true. We never had to face the consequences of our choices because there was always a safety net. When you removed that net, we had to figure things out on our own for once." "I appreciate you saying that, Ben Foster," I replied carefully. "It wasn't an easy decision for me," he nodded. "I get that now. And I want you to know that things are actually better for us. The apartment isn't as nice as your townhouse would have been, but it's ours, and we pay for it ourselves. The kids are doing fine with sharing rooms, and Sarah and I finally had to sit down and make a real budget, something we should have done years ago." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table to me. I opened it to find a check for $1,000, a substantial portion of what he still owed me. "It's not everything," he acknowledged, "but it's a start. I plan to pay back every cent." The check represented more than money. It was tangible evidence of his growth and our changing relationship. I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you," I said simply. "No, thank you," he replied, surprising me again, for not enabling me anymore, for forcing me to grow up even though I fought it every step of the way. We talked for nearly 2 hours that afternoon, having perhaps the most honest conversation of our adult lives. Ben Foster shared his struggles with financial responsibility, admitting that he had always envied my discipline while simultaneously resenting it. I confessed my frustration at being taken for granted and my guilt at finally standing up for myself. By the time we parted, something fundamental had shifted between us. We were no longer locked in the roles of responsible sister and irresponsible brother. We were simply two adults with different strengths and weaknesses finding a new way to be family without the unhealthy patterns of the past. The lessons I learned through the townhouse experience extended beyond family dynamics. I had discovered a confidence in my financial decisions that translated to other areas of my life. At work, I began speaking up more in meetings and taking on leadership roles in projects. I negotiated a promotion and salary increase, advocating for myself with an assurance I had previously reserved for advocating for others. I also began exploring additional investment opportunities, researching potential properties for a second real estate purchase. The success of the townhouse had given me both the financial means and the confidence to expand my portfolio. I consulted with financial advisors and real estate professionals, approaching each potential investment with careful analysis rather than emotional decision-making. My personal relationships benefited from my newfound boundary setting as well. I became more selective about how I spent my time and energy prioritizing connections that were reciprocal and supportive. I learned to say no without elaborate explanations or apologies, a simple skill that nevertheless transformed how I moved through the world. The holiday season brought another milestone. For the first time, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner at my apartment. It was a tight fit, but everyone made it work, including Ben Foster, Sarah, and the children. My mother brought her traditional stuffing, and my father carved the turkey I had nervously prepared following her recipe. As we gathered around my table, I looked at the faces of my family and felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been difficult, but we had emerged stronger with healthier relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation and expectation. Ben Foster raised his glass in a toast. To Jeannie, he said, "For teaching us all that true family support means helping each other grow, not enabling bad habits, and for making one hell of a turkey for her first Thanksgiving." Everyone laughed and clinked glasses. My mother reached over to squeeze my hand, her eyes communicating what words could not pride love and a deep appreciation for the woman I had become. The townhouse that had caused so much conflict had ultimately been the catalyst for positive change in all our lives. By standing firm in my decision, I had not only secured my financial future, but had also helped my family evolve into healthier versions of themselves. The short-term pain had led to long-term growth that none of us could have anticipated. As I reflect on this journey, the lesson that resonates most deeply is this: setting boundaries is not selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. By finally valuing my own needs and goals as much as those of my family, I created space for all of us to grow. The old saying that you can't pour from an empty cup proved profoundly true. Leila Monroe stands alone in the empty living room of the townhouse. Sunlight filters through the tall windows, warming the hardwood floors beneath her feet. Outside, laughter drifts faintly from the backyard, Ben Foster's voice mixing with her parents', light and effortless. The smell of fresh paint still lingers in the air, mingling with the cool touch of the fall breeze slipping through a cracked window. Her vision blurs, tears forming, not from sorrow, but a strange mix of relief and pride, tangled up with a quiet, gnawing guilt. After years of pulling herself in every direction, sacrificing her own dreams for her family's needs, this moment feels different. Here, right now, Leila tastes a future shaped on her own terms. Can real change come from saying no? Can standing up for yourself heal old wounds? The tension that held her tight loosens, replaced by a fragile, hopeful calm. For years, the townhouse symbolized every messy argument and impossible expectation. But now, it stands as a monument to what happened when Leila decided she was worth more than being the family's safety net. By protecting her hard-earned financial independence, she didn't just save herself, she gave her family a chance to grow differently. Ben, once charmingly irresponsible and stuck in dependence, started to find his footing away from old patterns. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. But the house, this space, marks where the old rules broke and something real began. Setting boundaries isn't easy or comfortable, especially with those closest to us. Have you ever felt drained by family demands, or struggled to say no and felt guilty for it? Trust me, it's possible to protect your own well-being and still be there for the people you love. Sometimes, the strongest act of love is saying no, quietly, firmly, without apology. This story isn't just mine. It's for anyone carving out space in a world that expects constant giving. It's proof that protecting yourself can open the door to better relationships, healthier, freer, and more honest. The empty townhouse holds the echo of past struggles and the promise of new beginnings. What would your future look like if you dared to set your own limits? I'm done sacrificing myself for the sake of what everyone else wants. That's where this story starts, and it's where real freedom begins.